This is because the writer Leo Tolstoy told the story of 3 difficult questions of one. Tolstoy did not know the name of that king, nor did he know the time period. One day the king thought that if only he could answer those 3 questions, he would never fail in any job. Those 3 questions are: 1. How to know which time is the most favorable for each job. 2. How do we know which character is the most important character that we must focus on? 3. How do we know which work is the most necessary work we must do? Thinking so, the king immediately issued an edict to all the people of the world, promising to reward whoever could answer those questions. The sages read the edict and immediately went to the capital. But each person gave the king a different answer. Regarding the first question, someone answered that if you want to know what time is the most favorable for each job, you must make a proper schedule, with days, hours, and months, and must strictly follow that schedule. That way we hope the job gets done on time. Others say it is impossible to predict in advance what needs to be done and the time to do it, that we should not indulge in pleasure but should pay attention to things as they happen so that we can do whatever is deemed necessary. Some people say that, no matter how much the king pays attention to the situation, he alone is not wise enough to decide the timing of everything wisely, so the king must establish a council. People and act according to their recommendations. Some people say that there are jobs that need to be decided immediately, so there is no time to consider whether it is time to do it or not. If you want to make the right decision, you must know in advance what will happen, so the king needs prophetic and speculative advisors. Regarding the second question, there are also many different answers. Some people say that the people the king needs to pay the most attention to are the mandarins and people in the court. Some people say that the bishops and venerables have the most important relationships. Some people say that the generals in the army have the most relationships. Regarding the third question, the wise also answered differently. Some people say science is the most important. Some people say religion is the most important. Some people say military decoration is the most important thing. Because the answers were different, the king could not agree with any sage, and did not reward anyone. After many nights of thinking, the king decided to question a monk on the mountain. This monk was famous for his enlightenment. The king wanted to go up the mountain to meet the monk and ask the other 3 questions. This Taoist never came down from the mountain, and where he lived there were only poor people. He never accepted to receive noble people. That and number 39. Why the king disguised himself as a commoner. When he reached the foot of the mountain, the king told his bodyguards to wait below, and alone, in a commoner and number 39's clothes, he climbed up to the priest and number 39's hut. The king met the monk who was hoeing the ground in front of the hut. When he saw the stranger, the farmer nodded and continued to dig the ground. The monk hoed the ground heavily because he was old and weak. Every time he picked up a piece of soil or turned it upside down, he gasped. The king approached the monk and said, I and number 39 am here to ask you to answer 3 questions for me. How to know the right time to act, not to let the opportunity pass and then regret it later? Who are the most important people that we must pay the most attention to? And what is the most important task that needs to be done first? The priest listened to the king but did not answer. He just patted the king and number 39's shoulder and bent down to continue digging. The king said, And quat, "The priest is very tired, give me the hoe, I will hoe for a while." And quat, the Taoist thanked him and gave the hoe to the king, then sat down on the ground to rest. After hoeing 2 mounds of land, the king stopped and repeated the question. The leader still did not answer, just stood up and held out his hand to demand the hoe, saying, "And quat, you have to rest now, it and number 39's my turn to hoe." And quat, but instead of handing him the hoe, the king bent down and continued digging. 1 hour, then 2 hours passed. Then the sun began to disappear behind the mountain top. The king stopped, put down his hoe, and said to the priest, "I came to ask the priest to answer a few questions. If you can and number 39's answer any questions for me, please let me know so I can go home." The priest heard the sound of people running somewhere and said to the king, "And quat, let and number 39's see if anyone is running." And quat, the king looked out and saw a man with a long beard running behind some bushes, holding his stomach with both hands. Blood soaked both hands. He tried to run to the king and fainted on the ground, lying motionless, groaning. The king and the priest took off the man and number 39's shirt and saw a deep stab wound in his stomach. The king washed the wound thoroughly and tore off his shirt to bandage the wound, but the blood soaked his entire shirt. The king washed his clothes and wounded himself. Just like that until it stops bleeding. At that time, the injured person woke up and asked for water. The king ran to fetch water from the stream for him to drink. At that time, the sun began to disappear and it started to get cold. Thanks to the priest and number 39's help, the king carried the victim into the hut and laid him on the priest and number 39's bed. He closed his eyes and lay still. The king was also tired from climbing and digging, so he sat against the door and fell asleep. The king slept so well that when he woke up it was already morning and it took a while for him to remember where he was and what he was doing. The king looked towards the bed and saw the injured man also staring at him, his eyes bright. That person saw that the king had woken up and was looking at him and said in a very weak voice, "Please forgive me, Your Majesty. What have you done that is so sinful that you should be forgiven? Your Majesty does not know me, but I know you. I am your enemy. I have sworn to kill you because in the past, during the war, you killed my brother and confiscated my property. I knew that Your Majesty would go up this mountain alone to meet the Taoist, so I ambushed you and was determined to kill you on the way back. But by evening Your Majesty still had not returned, so I left the ambush and went up the mountain to find Your Majesty to practice. Instead of meeting Your Majesty, I met 4 bodyguards. These guys recognized me, so they rushed back and stabbed me. I was able to escape and run up here, but if Your Majesty hadn't and #39's saved me, I would definitely have died from too much blood. I was determined to kill you, but you saved my life. I and number 39's am so sorry. Now, if I live, I vow to be your servant for the rest of my life, and I will also force my children to do the same. And quat, Your Majesty, please forgive my sins. And quat, seeing that he had easily reconciled with his enemy, the king was very happy. Not only did the king forgive the other man and number 39's sins, but he also promised to return his inheritance, and sent him the royal physician and his servants came to take care of him so he could heal. After sending his bodyguards to carry the injured man home, the king returned to find the priest to greet him. Before leaving, the king repeated the king and number 39's 3 questions one last time. The monk was kneeling on the ground sowing beans on the beds of soil that had been dug yesterday. The monk stood up and looked at the king, but the king and number 39's 3 questions have already been answered. The king asks, answer. What and number 39's the point? Yesterday if the king had an and #39. T felt sorry for the poor, old and weak people and had helped hoe these beds of land. When he left, the king would have been ambushed and executed by that person, and the king would have regretted that. Did not stay with me. So the most important time is the time when the king is digging the ground. The most important person at that time is the poor man, and the most important job is the work of helping the poor man. Then after that, when the injured man ran up, the most important time was the time the king took care of him, because if the king did not bandage his wound, he would die and the king would not have a chance to reconcile with him. That and number 39's why he is the most important figure, and the work the king does to bandage his wounds is the most important. Please remember this well. End quote. There is only one important time, that is the present time, the present moment. The present moment is important because it is the only time in which we can control us. And the most important character is the one who is specifically living with us, standing in front of us, because who knows who we will have to deal with in the future. Important work. The most important thing is to make the people who are specifically living next to us, standing in front of us, happy, because that is the main meaning of life. Thank you for joining us for today's fairy tale. We hope these stories bring joy and meaning to your day. If you love our channel, please hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any exciting tales. Wishing you a good night and sweet dreams. See you in the next story.